I did a series then well, I should back up. At the same time, I was doing the John Pelham series. Those were the William Jeffries books. Also, more traditional murder mysteries. My character, as I mentioned, John Pelham, location scout with independent film companies, would be on location somewhere. Now, rule number one, never be John Pelham's friend or associate in the opening chapter, because you weren't going to make it to chapter 2. And then his assignment, like the gunslinger who comes to town, is to fight for truth, justice in the American way and find out what happened to his buddy, with a few other deaths along the way. But again, smaller books. And I thought, well, they aren't really selling too well. Why is that? And I sat back and I considered, for one thing, I was writing them for myself. Now, I used many of the techniques I use now. I like the twists and turns. But these were characters that I found interesting. And the stories I thought were very functional. And the stories meandered a little bit. I put in more character development. I put in a lot of set design, a lot of scenery, a lot of backstory, a lot of local color. And I went back and I reread them all. When I saw that the sales were, not so great. They weren't getting reviewed much, and paperback originals tend not to, but still, I thought, I'm not getting the action that I want in the business. What's going on here? And when I went back and reread them, I said, well, I'm not sure I would actually want to pick up these books and read them myself. What would I want to pick up and read? And a book that comes to mind, going back to my youth, is, say, 7 Days in May. A book, The Fifth Horseman. Now, I think Patterson has a Fifth Horseman out now. This was The Fifth Horseman about, believe it or not, a terrorist attack in Manhattan, a potential terrorist attack. This was written, I think, in the late 1970s or early 1980s, in which the hero has to track down an atomic bomb hidden somewhere in Manhattan, planted there by Gaddafi, the early bin Laden character. That book moved so quickly. And I said, well, this is what I like to read. I think that's where I'm going to shift my focus. And then the books became bigger. Multiple plots, a larger cast of characters, more was at stake, not just finding out what happened, but answering the question, what is going to happen? And we went off from there.
Okay, but you know what? You had to learn how to do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think that your early books probably, if you look at it as the development of a writer, were you learning your craft, you probably couldn't have written one of those books.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that.
It takes a lot of practice to do that,
absolutely
handling multiple
right.
plots, different narrative voices, getting the pacing right. All the rest of it is something that you learn.
Well, when I teach courses, I'm not a tenured professor or anything, but I do seminars from time to time. And I tell my students, after you've written your first draft of anything, it's going to be bad. I mean, by definition, a first draft is bad. Mine are terrible. The good news is if you look at it and see how terrible it is. The bad news is if you go back and read it and you see that it's wonderful, it's all ready to go. That means you probably don't have the discerning eye yet to realize what works and what doesn't. After a few books, you will get that discerning eye if you keep at it. So the Rune books and so forth, I will tell you this though, all the William Jeffries books and the Rune books I rewrote, page 1 to the end. The plots are very similar, the story's pretty much the same, but the books that people can find in the stores now are different.
Are they revised versions, really?
Yep, revised versions.
Wow, I'm amazed that you found the time to do that in a life as busy as yours.
It was a very, very busy year to do that. Now, these are shorter books, too.
I understand that, but I, as a matter of fact, as an editor, have taken on a couple of books where I've asked the author if the author, not under compulsion for me, would like to rewrite the book, because you really don't get, most people never get that chance. They either don't have a publisher who's willing, or they just simply don't have time to do it. But you are the most compulsive self-editor and rewriter. I mean, I always think of you, that image that you once gave to me, saying that if your publisher would let you, you would hang by your heels over a press and keep editing while the books were rolling through the press. And I thought, that's so you.
you know, we do this for the readers. What is best for them? It's not. Are we tired? Do you think?
But so? Jeff, a lot of authors don't do that. I mean, if you talk to Parker or whatever, he's done. You know, first draft, never touches it again. Yeah, I can't tell you how often I hear that.
And Larry Block the same way. Yeah. But they're smart. I mean, they know.
I don't know that it's smart. I think that their editing process, that they can't move on until they think it's perfect. And so it's like building up blocks rather than doing what you do, which is to get the whole thing down and then go back. I think that it's like laying bricks, actually, is what I should say.
I think that's a very good analogy. My sister is a young adult writer, and she will not go on to page 2 unless page 1 is perfect. And now her books are not plot driven. She doesn't have the multiple outlines like I do. And I have, you know, The Cold Moon, 140-page outline. Garden of Beasts right there, 160-page outline. So I know where the story is going to go, so I can just bang out the first draft really quickly. But she works differently. And her books tend to be a little more character-driven. They're more situation-driven. And she lets the story go where it will. And, you know, many superb prize-winning authors of thrillers do that. My books are a little different. They're more like roller coasters, and you need that blueprint. Otherwise, you're going to get to the end, and I'm going to say,
and your clock won't tick, right?
Yeah, well said. I like that. My clock won't tick.
Tell me about Lincoln Rhyme. Why did you decide to make him a quadriplegic? I mean, you really handicapped him.
Yeah, literally. Lincoln Rhyme. I'm always looking for ways to create the same book I've always given my readers, which means a Deaver book. It takes place over a short time period. It has lots of twists and turns internally, and then it has a surprise ending or two. It has some bit of esoterica. In The Cold Moon, for instance, time, clocks, watches. In The Vanished Man, magic and illusion. I like those little bits.
Which was your locked room one?
Which was the what? No,
the locked room one.
That was The Vanished Man.
The Vanished Man. That's where it's, right.
So that's a typical Deaver book, and I want to give readers what they've come to expect. I never will go out of genre. I don't want to shatter their expectations, but you still need something to make the story fresh. You can only have so many serial killers. You can only have so many very clever hitmen. So my theory was to take a different kind of hero. And I have written, and we have seen many of, the alcoholic cop, the wise guy private detective who walks into the bar and exchanges bon mots with the bartender, and then the plucky young amateur private eye, a la Roon, who against all odds solves the crime when the policeman can't. Well, those are fine characters, the stock characters of detective fiction. I just wanted somebody different, and I thought, what would I like to read, stepping into the role of my readers? And I thought, you know, we haven't seen a Sherlock Holmes lately, not a real Sherlock Holmes, somebody who doesn't pull out a gun. Well, Holmes had his pistol if he needed it, or at least Dr. Watson did, but they were more intellectual efforts. His weapons were his mind, like Hercule Poirot, the little gray cells. And I thought, well, okay, that's good. I'm gonna do a Sherlock Holmes for our era, but I'm going to out Sherlock Holmes Sherlock Holmes. It's another bad verb. You'll have to excuse me there. And by that I mean he is not going to be able to get out into the field. He has to use his mind. First, he was going to be a paraplegic, sort of like Ironside, the old Raymond Burr TV character. And then I thought, no, I want to go all the way. I want to make this book almost impossible for me to write, create a situation that's almost impossible for this character to get out of. And yet I want the readers, when it comes to the end of that book, to be on the edge of their chair saying, there's no way in the world this man is going to survive the end of this book. We are going to come to absolutely love him, even though he's a curmudgeon and suffers from this very severe disability. And how on earth is he going to get out of the situation that Deaver has created for him? Well, thanks to my outlining process and 8 months of figuring this out, I came up with a fairly workable plan for him. And I finished the book, and I thought, okay, it works.